this one. So the 75 millimeter on here is the M3, a very good tank tank. The downside is that it's mounted in the hull. It can only travel a little bit left and right, and you've got to aim the whole tank at the target. Also, you cannot assume a hull down position. Your little gun up on top can spin around, but the big gun needs to be up. You need to be up on the surface, basically, so you can turn your whole tank in the general direction of fire. We're thrilled to have that vehicle here as part of our collection. Like I say, I like to refer to it as the granddaddy of the Sherman tank. You'll see a Sherman later on. And I mentioned about engines, too. That one's running on a radial aircraft engine. Some of the Lee and Grant tanks had diesel engines. Some of them had gasoline engines. Some of them had the radial aircraft engines. We were looking for anything during the 1940s that we could run a tank on because we needed the engines. As fast as we could make them, we needed them. So that's why you end up with a lot of different variations.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks.
You may not know it, but you've actually seen these tanks in movies before. If any of you have seen the movie The Pianist, where the tank is down in the street firing at the building, that's actually a modified Swiss PZ-68. One of the things we like about tanks is that they're fun to drive, and we can take them a lot of different places, like the hole in the hill that you just saw. The Cadillac engine's in it, and it is a fast vehicle. That's why one of the reasons it's called Hellcat. It's one of the fastest vehicles in the American military in terms of tracked vehicles. We're thrilled to have it here. Like I said, this vehicle was used by the U.S. forces in World War II, both in Europe and in the Pacific. After the war, they were sold to a lot of countries like Venezuela and Yugoslavia. This one came out of Yugoslavia. I believe it was knocked out 4 times and put back into service. When we got it, it was nasty, it was ugly, it had the same kind of paint as the M36 sitting down there on the road. It also had a single RPG hit in the back of the turret, which we have left in there. It's just a tiny little hole. We sort of left it as a memorial to those guys who served in it. When we got this thing, cleaning it out was a chore. I think we're going to make a couple of laps if I'm reading Alan's hand signals correctly. We always have to double check ourselves when we do this because we know we put enough gas in them to bring them out here. Actually operating in the I told you tuning was the main protection for this vehicle. You'll see it here. This is a very fast vehicle, one of the fastest tracked vehicles the U.S. had in the European theater. Riding on the back. The T-34 is built from lots of grab iron. so that soldiers could ride on the tanks into battle. You know, Americans had a lot of half-tracks and a lot of truck-borne infantry. In Russia, there was not nearly as many trucks. Many of the trucks they had, we gave them for the war. But what they would do in battle is have guys ride onto the tanks in the battle and then jump off when they got close to engaging the target. This particular tank has an 85 millimeter gun. Early in the war, the tank had a smaller turret, a 4-man crew, and a 76 millimeter gun. But even then, it was a very good anti-tank gun. And the tank, when it actually got into battle against the Germans, they'd already made about 1,200 of them at that point. There was a total shock to the Germans. The German tanks had straight sides, slab sides, narrow tracks. The armor was not nearly as thick as this. And the T-34 revolutionized the sloping hull. In fact, the Germans thought it was a pretty good tank. None other than Ewald von Kleist, the Field Marshal, 1st Panzer Army, said this T-34 is the best tank in the world. That's coming from a German Field Marshal. The Germans, with this 85 millimeter gun on the T-34-85, is quite the tank killer. These were used in Russia against both the German forces and later against the Japanese forces conflict they had in 1945. After the war, they were sold all over the world. The North Koreans used these. This is what we ran up against in 1950. Now, one of the things I like to do is tell people this is one of our coolest American design tanks. It's a Russian tank. Yeah, it's a Russian tank. But the suspension was designed by a gentleman by the name of Walter Christie. He saw tanks after World War I and he said, I can make them a lot faster, a lot easier to ride in. So he developed a system that had real big road wheels like you see on the T-34, mounted on the springs that were boxes on the side of the hull. Kind of like torsion bars. There's nothing going through the hull. The boxes with the suspension unit and the springs are mounted on the side of the hull. That leaves room in the hull for things like extra ammunition. It's always a good thing. The Americans didn't adopt the Christie suspension, the Walter Christie design, but he did find audiences that liked it in England with the cruiser tanks and in Russia with the BT tanks. The BT tanks turned into eventually what became the T-34. And I think the measure of its success is not only the fact that over 80,000 of them were made, but the fact that it continues to serve today in some armies in Africa. And the Chinese even still use it as a training vehicle. I think the Russians even have a few of these in wartime reserve. It's very unlikely they'd ever use them, but they made a lot of them, and they rebuilt them again and again and again. As this tank drives by, I want you to look at the fine quality Russian casting on the turret. To say it is rough is an understatement. Frankly, some of the other tank that we just recently painted the stripes on down there, the other T-34, I think Rock Island Arsenal would have taken that turret and thrown it out of the back lot and crashed. And we even have a gentleman who's a volunteer here also interesting to note that the engine of this 234, with some modifications, some upgrades. But at one time, most Vietnamese decided to attack a Special Forces base to use our picture. What they didn't know when they attacked that Special Forces base was that we had gotten wind of the attack, and we had taken some M48s to surround the base. They attacked at night, xenon searchlights came on, and the M48s had a turkey shoot, basically. Now, a couple of our M48s got hit, one got knocked out, but all of the TT-76s got destroyed. That was the only tank-to-tank battle that U.S. forces had in South Vietnamese. Those things hold down, and we have water jets. So it's not just propelling itself to the track, it's actually pushing itself through the water to steer that way. The fact that the Russian army still continues to use it indicates to me that the vehicle is probably going to be used for a number of years. Yeah. Besides artillery, armor had ramped up in World War I. But World War I also saw the introduction of another weapon that at the time was considered a terror weapon, but by World War II became very practical. And that's the use of fire as a weapon. Fire as a weapon like that goes back longer than any other weapon you'll see out here. The Byzantines, the Romans, as much as 2,000 years ago, were using fire against their enemy. As the dark bolt-action rifle was the principal weapon. Like that, weapons like that were ineffective compared to our old semi-automatic weapons. Carbine. Our team now is laying down the base of fire. Squad leader is calling in artillery support. Soften that target up. We may be dumb, but we're not stupid.
Oh, I landmine. Is that a landmine? Imagine if one just came up like that. Whoa!
One problem is when you're using indirect fire artillery,
Here comes the
you're
tank.
still having to keep a server on front. No guarantee you're going to be able to lay steel on target with the technology we have at that time. It'll be a little bit more effective when we can get our hands on them. Again, combined service. That Sherman may be an inferior to the time. Against the Japanese, they were just... Now all the weapons are coming up. Like they were 30 caliber light machine. We cannot get to the people in the boat, or we can sure tell people.
Like firecrackers. Smell it? Yeah, there's a... Here comes the flamethrower. Where is it? Over there.
All right, the squad leader now is giving shift fire. They stop the bunker, keeping their heads down. They shift the time, they're not aiming their own troops. They're closing, they're coming in with the flamethrower. And again, the idea behind it is basically incapacitate those people that you cannot see. Come on in.
I'd say it was very effective. Flipping that 70 pounds around, he just took his entire load. On the other hand, he's pretty much incapacitated those Japanese soldiers.
One more time, I'd like to take a moment to ask you guys to thank the Marine Corps Historical Society. The company is here. Once again, one of the stars of our show. I don't know what it is, but if you burn it, they will come. They do an incredible presentation. They keep the history alive, and they are a teaching tool for the Marines, not only for their guys, but for us as well. I also want to thank the volunteers who brought the Sherman tank out here to provide them some heavy armor support, and the folks that were here to help us with the pyrotechnics. All came out pretty well. The tank fired, and then the bunker blew up. That's the way it's supposed to happen. Yeah. I also want to take a moment to especially recognize our Marine who was carrying 70 pounds plus on his back. Give him a nice round of applause. Cold War paraphernalia. This is the kind of tank that in the 60s and 70s would have come through the Fulda Gap in huge numbers had World War III started. Notice on the back, two big barrels. Tanks are voracious when it comes to consuming fuel. To carry two 55-gallon drums is a tremendous help. It's a quiet vehicle, not much louder than a Volkswagen bus. Got his weapon in the bag right here.